30 billion, roughly, the loss?
I haven't made a calculation, but it was a substantial number for sure.
Well, that sure is substantial. You see, I'm getting...
Back in 1998, Chrysler and Daimler-Benz made one of the most ambitious announcements in automotive history, a merger of equals. Two corporate giants were now united, one German, one American, supposedly pooling their engineering, technology, and resources to become an unstoppable global powerhouse. It sounded brilliant, it sounded revolutionary, and it sounded like both companies were going to benefit from this merger. But, as we all know now, it didn't quite turn out that way. Now, before we get into the actual vehicles, it's important to understand the timeline. 1998, Daimler-Benz buys Chrysler for around $36 billion. Around 1999 to 2003, optimistic beginning, some shared tech, some cross-development, things were looking good. 2004 to 2006-ish, budgets shrink, culture clash intensifies, quality starts to fall. 2007, Daimler sells Chrysler for $7 billion. 2009, Chrysler declares bankruptcy just 2 years after the divorce. Before we dig into the worst cars of this era, we need to clarify something critical. When I say a car was created because of the merger, I mean the vehicle would not have existed in the form it did if Daimler and Chrysler had not merged. These are vehicles whose platforms, engines, suspensions, electronics, or entire existence were shaped directly by Daimler's oversight. Some vehicles from this period were merely sold during the merger, like the Dodge Neon, Chrysler LHS, and 300M. Other cars, for example the Pacifica, used its rear suspension design, door modules, electronic modules from Mercedes. It doesn't make sense to include the Neon, not like I would anyway, but I will include cars if they just shared parts. Anyway, without wasting any more time, here are the worst Daimler-Chrysler era vehicles, the cars that best represent the chaos, cost-cutting, and questionable decisions of that era. I'm going to start off with Mercedes in general. They were selling plenty of cars, but the brand's reputation for bulletproof engineering took a noticeable hit. Models like the first generation M-Class and the C-Class sold extremely well, yet both were noticeably cheaper in quality. The Alabama-built M-Class was especially rough with cheap plastics, panel gaps, electrical issues, and early stability problems. Meanwhile, the C-Class suffered from constant electrical failures, weak interior materials, but, these were pretty reliable. Mercedes was expanding fast and cost-cutting even faster, and it showed. The cars looked premium in some cases and sold in big numbers, but underneath, the quality simply wasn't up to Mercedes' old standards. I'm not saying their entire lineup was like this, because it wasn't, but the M-Class and C-Class were for sure sloppy. Next is the Dodge Nitro, and I really don't like these things. It shared its bones with the Jeep Liberty, but Daimler wanted Chrysler to expand the portfolio, so Dodge got its own version with a more aggressive, squared-off design. Big old fender flares, wide stance, enormous grille, sharp angles everywhere. Mechanically, not quite the beast Dodge promised. Under the hood, the Nitro featured Chrysler's aging 3.7 V6, an engine already known for being loud, thirsty, and not exactly powerful. Paired with that was a 4-speed automatic, just bad, and the damn thing weighed over 2 tons, and so these were pretty slow. The RTs got a 4-liter, 260 horsepower, and these were paired to a 5-speed automatic, so not as bad. Also, when it comes to styling, the RTs probably look the best, at least in my opinion. I mean, early SXT models, they didn't even get matching bumpers. I would expect that from a bare-bones Neon, but not something like this. Daimler's influence was subtle with things crashing and burning in 2007, but there was an influence. Electronics, interior parts, and the engineering standards set during the merger. Inside, the plastics, they felt like they were molded from recycled lawn furniture. Every surface had a hollow, brittle feel, like if you tapped the dashboard too hard, it would crack like an Easter egg. Reviews were not kind. We got harsh ride, slow acceleration, sloppy handling, excessive road noise, and below average reliability. The Nitro is just a perfect example of the DaimlerChrysler era problem, a cool concept executed with half the budget it needed. When the Jeep Compass launched in 2007, Jeep fans were confused. Jeep meant ruggedness, toughness, trail-rated capability. The Compass meant, well, a hatchback pretending to be an SUV. This was Daimler's push to make Chrysler competitive globally, especially in Europe. They wanted Jeep to have a compact, efficient model to compete with the Toyota RAV4 and Honda CR-V. But instead of building a true Jeep, they built a car-based crossover on the new GS platform, a global small car architecture created during the merger. And that's where things went wrong. Again, with the interior. It's okay that it's minimalistic, it's a Jeep, right? It's the quality that's the major problem. The dashboard felt like someone had melted down a collection of old storage containers and shaped them into a vaguely car-like form. The CVT transmission, not good. The 2.4 world engine, not good. And that front end, not good either. These did get a facelift in 2011 or something, years after the merger ended. Then Fiat came in, but these early Compasses, just not a fan. Looking at Jeep's lineup in 2007, I would rather have the Wrangler, the Grand Cherokee, the Commander, the Patriot, maybe even the Liberty over the Compass. I will say though, one cool feature I saw when looking through sales brochure is with the premium sound group, you got flip down liftgate speakers. That's pretty neat. The 2007 Compass wasn't just a mistake, it was a symptom of a bigger issue. Daimler wanted Chrysler to build global cars, but Chrysler did not have the resources to do it well. Which actually leads us to the number 3 car in my opinion, the second gen Dodge Durango. Let me ask you this. Of the 3 generations, and I can't believe the 3rd gen is still going strong, introduced back in 2011, mind you, I think the 2nd gens are by far the worst. The 2nd gen Durango wasn't a Chrysler Mercedes co-platform like the LX cars, but Daimler still influenced it a lot. The budget, the development timeline, the electronics, NVH standards, and interior spending limits. That combination created a weird, awkward, lumbering SUV that felt outdated the day it launched. Built on the new N platform also shared with the Dakota, the Durango had the size and presence of a proper 3-row SUV. But Chrysler didn't have the money to give it the refinement it needed. You look at the competition, right? I'd rather go Ford or Chevy any day of the week. On the plus side, these I believe were the first cars to feature the 5.7 Hemi, which that's pretty cool. They could tow almost 9,000 pounds, which that's actually really impressive. But you start reading stories from owners and they're just scary. The rust on these bad boys was really bad. Again, CVT transmission, and because of their weight, off-roading wasn't good at all. And look where the engine is. It's practically hidden. The Aspen was much nicer. They look a lot better in my opinion. Rare SUV for sure. But these 2nd gen Durangos, man, in my opinion, deserve to be included in this video. If there's one car that epitomizes the weirdness of the Daimler-Chrysler marriage, it's the Chrysler Crossfire. If you don't know, this sports coupe was built on the leftover bones of the 1990s Mercedes SLK platform. The styling was bold, it was unique, futuristic, and honestly, they still look cool today. The fastback rear, the long hood, the SRT6, really cool cars. The Crossfire was definitely memorable. And at first, I had this car being featured, but after reading more about it, I gotta say, I changed my mind. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with me, but to each their own. I just think there was a lot worse. The Chrysler Pacifica was officially billed as the first jointly engineered product of the 1998 merger of equals. Chrysler led the project and developed it in just 30 months for under $1 billion. Mercedes engineers contributed suspension input, electronics, and interior tech. DaimlerChrysler hyped the Pacifica as the next major player in the emerging luxury crossover market, confidently forecasting 100,000 sales per year. Despite its Mercedes-like interior and advanced features, the Pacifica faced stiff competition from established luxury crossovers like the Lexus RX and BMW X5, and buyers didn't see Chrysler as a premium brand. Chrysler was for sure a premium brand, especially in the 70s, but as time went on, not so much. What's funny is that the company signed Celine Dion to reposition Chrysler as upscale, but the campaign flopped so badly it was canceled after a year. DaimlerChrysler was also reluctant to publicly emphasize the Pacifica's Mercedes technology, fearing it would cannibalize sales from higher profit Mercedes models. The Pacifica drove well, offering a car-like ride and comfortable handling, but early models suffered from serious drawbacks: a heavy curb weight, a weak V6, an aging 4-speed automatic, poor fuel economy, and early reliability issues. A stronger engine and 6-speed transmission arrived in 2007, but too late to revive interest. Sales peaked in 2004 and declined every year after, with a total of 376,000 units sold. Positioned awkwardly between minivan practicality and luxury SUV aspirations, the Pacifica never convinced buyers it was a true premium crossover. Growing up, we had one of these, and I actually remember liking it. We didn't have the Touring or Limited, it was just the Pacifica, but it was nice. The Daimler-Chrysler merger is widely regarded as one of the worst automotive mergers in history. But why? And the simple explanation is, Mercedes engineers were structured, formal, and command-driven. Chrysler engineers were creative, fast-moving, and informal. They didn't think the same way, they didn't design the same way, they didn't compromise the same way. Instead of complementing each other, the cultures, they collided. Publicly, Daimler said it was a merger of equals. Privately, they treated Chrysler like a low-budget branch. Back in 1998, Daimler bought Chrysler for $36 billion, and they sold it for $7 billion. That is one of the steepest corporate write-downs in automotive history. Also, Chrysler had $9 billion in reserve before the merger. After the merger, Benz took that money and invested in Hyundai and other wasteful spending. So those were some of the worst vehicles of the Daimler-Chrysler era, a time when two very different companies tried to merge into one. In terms of the history and all the details, I'm definitely leaving stuff out. Regular Car Reviews has a 30-minute video on its history if you're interested. I am so ready to read the wave of comments from owners and whatnot. This is going to be very interesting. That's it for this week's video. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll try and see you all next week.